Today we're going to be talking about the modern conservative movement, and this is chapter 33, section 1. The title is A Conservative Movement Emerges. Now, the high point of modern conservatism, you could argue, was in 1980 with the election of President Ronald Reagan and Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush, also known as the first Bush. And so today we'll be talking again about modern conservatism. Some of the key issues in the modern conservative movement have been the removal of, quote, entitlement programs. And these are programs that provide guaranteed benefits to specific groups. And one issue that really irks conservatives is A, the high cost of these programs, and B, the stories of fraud associated with some of these programs. Ergo, welfare provides guaranteed benefits to people, therefore people abuse these programs, would be a classic conservative argument. Many have also been skeptical of the civil rights movement. For example, the use of busing to integrate schools. Some have argued that the requirement to bus students over long distances creates an unnecessary burden on taxpayers. So, while conservatives are a very diverse group of people, they represent a coalition, meaning that while diverse in interest and backgrounds, conservatives unite around certain causes. In 1980, this coalition called itself the New Right. Some of these groups united around single issues. Some conservatives claimed at this time that affirmative action was, quote, reverse discrimination. Now again, affirmative action is a program requiring special consideration of women and minorities in hiring and university admissions. And the federal government was able to implement this requirement into companies or programs or nonprofits that receive federal funding. Many claim this is reverse discrimination, that is, favoring minorities over white Americans. The Conservative Coalition was a collection of business and religious and other grassroots groups calling themselves the Conservative Coalition. This was the result of a number of right-leaning or conservative publications or think tanks, pundits who met to discuss issues relating to their interest and also to develop policies. And some of the goals of the conservative movement starting in 1980 were small government, family values, American patriotism and loyalty, and pro-business. So if these are values you highly place when voting, then you might be a conservative. So if these are goals you hope to implement above others, then you may find yourself voting for conservative politicians. Now, modern conservatism has its roots in the 1970s, partly due to religious revival. Television evangelists such as Jerry Falwell and his moral majority movement. And this televangelist preached that the United States had diverted from its moral course He had a strong following among fundamentalist Christians, and that is Christians who adhere to the fundamental teachings of the Bible, take it at its face value. And again, his movement was called the moral majority. And Jerry Falwell endorsed various conservative candidates for political positions. And so Christians, through this movement, were becoming what we call a political bloc, meaning voting together for particular political candidates and becoming a powerful political group. Now, in 1980, Ronald Reagan won the Republican nomination for president. His running mate, George Herbert Walker Bush, is going to go on to be president after Reagan's tenure. Reagan had started his public career as an actor, but had been a long-serving member of the Republican Party. He had served 2 terms as governor of California. He had been involved in the Republican Party ever since the 1960s. And so he'd had a long career. In the 1980 presidential election, Reagan was running on these conservative issues that we've just talked about. He claimed the economy was on a weak standing. The Iran crisis had hurt the reputation of the United States, and that we needed a strong leader who would respond to these diplomatic crises with a firm hand. He was called the Great Communicator. His experience in Hollywood had taught him the power of breaking down complex issues in a simple way so that uneducated Americans could understand them. He developed a reputation for providing clear and simple answers to complex questions. He won the presidential election with 51% of the popular vote, carrying 44 states in November of 1980. This also allowed, because most people vote down party ticket, for a Republican majority in the Senate.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Congratulations, sir.
As a government, not the other way around.
With his new conservative agenda, Reagan promises the most sweeping political shift since Franklin Delano Roosevelt created the New Deal in the 1930s.
It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. Let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look.